need to starve to death, when you're not being controlled by the pharmaceutical industry, where you're not being controlled by so-called governments, but really it's the beings, you know, above those governments. You know, and I could go on all day about it. You know, there's so much stuff that's been woven in, and it's just, to me, it's just so, you know, it's not idealistic. It's so simple. It's getting this message across that it isn't that life is hard because it's hard. It's getting the message across, you know, how do you free people that don't realize they're in a prison? I mean, they're not going to try and get free if they don't realize they're being controlled. And it's saying, you know, like, you don't have to live the way you're living. I mean, even the way with money and how that controls everything, doesn't it? You know,
right, that's right. And it's almost like, obviously there's two levels to this, Lindy. The first one is you need to realize that you're controlled, and then the second one is that you need to realize that you actually are not controlled, that you're actually free, and that this is just a mental perception. So you can, in one way, you're kind of back to square one, but you've gone through a process of realization, obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess realization is all of it. It's realizing that it isn't just, you know, most of us grow up and think, well, that's just life. You know, you grow up, you get a job, or if you can get a job, and then you pay the mortgage or you pay the rent, and you don't have much money, and you do this and you do that. And if you stop, you know, most people in the streets, and I mean, I don't know if it's the same where you are, but most people in the street here are generally quite negative, because they've been stamped into the ground. They've lost their homes, they've lost their jobs, their marriages are falling apart. The pressure, and I would say again, this is deliberate pressure that's being put on us, not random, not because accidentally the monetary system has gone down. I don't believe a word of that. You know, it's all orchestrated. And it's just, again, you know, just saying to people, you know, it doesn't have to be this way. If you actually, the power is en masse. It's not individual. And we've been encouraged here to be as isolated as possible. You're not encouraged to interact with your neighbours. You're not encouraged to interact with your town or village. Everything is very, very, it's been encouraged to be very, very separate, more and more isolated, you know. A neighbour could die and not be found for a week here, you know, and that's right. The God's honest truth, you know. That's how bad it is. And I'm sure that's that in other places in the world as well, you know. I'm not just knocking the UK, but and it shouldn't be like that. And that's a deliberate agenda again, you know. We're being kept isolated that way, and it's getting people to not be afraid of coming together in a peaceful way, and connecting on a different level. Absolutely. There is just, you know, just so much fear, and, you know, when people losing their jobs and things like that, they get depressed and they shut themselves away, and there are tiny little time bombs going off in people's heads left, right and centre. You know, where people are thinking there's no way out, and how do they cope? And they're not realizing they're just bit players in a play here. That, you know, they're not realizing, they're not seeing the bigger picture. They're not realizing that they can do something about this. It doesn't have to be this way. The people or the entities that are causing a lot of this are in a minority. We are in a massive majority, and we can change that peacefully by changing ourselves, by coming out of the head, coming into the heart, coming into the soul, thinking, what is it I want to do with my life? What resonates with me? What makes me happy? Thinking about the people you love. The bottom line is, if you lost everything tomorrow, nothing matters than the people you love and the people that love you. If you took everything else away, stripped the lot away, the bottom line is nothing else matters. If you haven't got love, nobody loves you, you don't love anybody, you know, and that's the bottom line here. And it's getting back into what's important. It's not important to have the latest car, the latest house, the latest telly, you know, to watch the X Factor, who's going to win that. Again, it's all part of the control system to keep you distracted from realizing the own power and your own divinity, really. And I'm, as you can hear in my voice, totally passionate about this stuff, because I can see it and feel it so acutely, and I know that it's not difficult to change this. It's just getting to enough people, which is why I'm so delighted, to be on your show, because I know that in the times that we're living in, to just get to one client at a time, or 30 or 40 people in a village hall at a time with this, is not enough. We need to get to thousands at a time, or millions at a time, to change this perception. Because once we reach this little critical mass, this point of balance where the seesaw tips, then that perception, that knowledge, that knowing goes across to all of humanity, and then we're there. And I'm not, I'm just one of thousands of people talking this way. I'm one of thousands doing this work. I'm one of thousands that thinks this way. I'm very, very lucky, or maybe it's fate, the guys upstairs, that I'm being given a platform. That seems to be one of my roles, and to be given a platform on the media side of it and getting it across, to be one of those people that bridge the gap. Because I don't like the idea that I don't want to be, lunked with the so-called, people say it in a very nasty way, but this love and light brigade, and as if it's a dirty word, and it shouldn't be. But I'm a very, very ordinary person. I'm very, passionate person, and I'm knowledgeable about the world. Things like I say, I've got a 15-year background of knowledge in this myself, and I'll tell you again, how I got into this. 15 years ago, again, it was something that wasn't intended, but my mother was in a mediumship circle, and the medium running that was channeling a high level entity, a being, a non-human being, that was giving specific information on world changes that have all now already happened. And there are written transcripts of this, which I have seen many times and read. And I based much of the film I wrote on that information because I knew it to be true and was involved in it. And these were details of not the details of 9/11, but the details of an attack on America. These were things like a planet that was going to be found that hadn't been found then. Blair getting into power when Blair wasn't even on the horizon. These were things years in advance before they happened. And that's how I got involved, because I was seeing it unfold. I was being told what was coming, and that changed my life, because I suddenly got passionate about wanting to read everything that people were saying alternatively about this. And the more I looked into it, the more I found that the pieces of the puzzle all came together, and basically everybody was saying the same thing. That's how I got into David Icke and all of this stuff, Right. So that's how I got my interest in the world stuff. And I've seen those changes take place now. So again, that's
confirmation for you, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. I've had my confirmation. True.
Well, that's very, very interesting. I mean, we have so much more to talk about here. Obviously, I want to discuss more about these entities that you do talk about. I want to ask you a little bit about the elite, if you will, of this world, if they are human or not, obviously, but also what they will go through, and if they will actually go through change, or if they will continue to resist that and go down with the ship, if you will, and obviously these changes as well. But let's save some of that and talk more about that in the second hour for our members, Lindsay. But I want to go through some of your websites again. Obviously, you have two different sites out there. There's easy ways, I guess, for our listeners